Let's do this thing.
All right. So, Tom, I'm super excited. We have our theme for this episode. It's the top five of 2025. So we basically took our where we felt were our top five guests, and we're going to
Hmm.
recap them and then talk about their takeaways. And also, I really appreciate you telling the other guests that they didn't make the list.
Yeah. Well, I figured you would assign me the dirty work. Um,
Exactly. So you
but
need to
yeah,
do that. So you can tell them, say, I really like you. It wasn't you. It's
right.
me,
It's
but you
not
didn't
you,
make the
it's
list.
me. It's not you, it's me.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So
I
we're gonna
can't
do.
believe I can't believe we're actually celebrating the year, my friend. This
It's
is
the year end.
crazy.
I'm
And
pretty
it goes
excited.
by too fast. Yeah.
All
But
right,
I'm excited
awesome.
to do this. Let's rock and roll.
All right, let's go. Let's hit our first guest.
Let's do it.
Here.
Yeah, here's my question, Steve, and it's said in slightly different ways each time, but still the same thing. If you've got a minute to feed our target audience one thing that you want to leave with them to improve their communications today, what would that be?
Oh, that's easy. Develop a strategy. Really, develop a strategy. And again, do your homework on what is entailed in a strategy. It's the who, what, when, where, how. That really is. Who are the stakeholders? How are you going to communicate? What's the, means of delivery? What's the messaging? How are you going to measure your goals and objectives? Just have a strategy. That has to be, I think, the number one omission, and it wasn't my number one omission that I've seen. Companies just don't think that through.
So I think what I'm gathering from me is two different quotes for our target audience, and that is if you fail to communicate, you fail. And then adding on to that is if you don't plan, right, plan to fail. The mesh of those two quotes right there is pretty much what we want all of our small business folks in this community to walk away with.
All right. So that was my favorite guest, obviously, for multiple reasons. One, he's a communication strategist, and I don't know if you remember, he's also from Rhode Island. So clearly, he was the best guest we had all year.
Yeah, and I think that your mindset is completely tainted and off. But no, I agree. I like Steve as a guest too. And you and I are partial to this, right, Adam? Because like we're both coming from the importance of communication. So I think that we're really leaning to this. Steve is a brilliant dude. And I
Mhm.
think that honestly, the big message there that he was trying to push is just this, right? Like know what the heck you're trying to do when it comes to communications. Plan it. Like make a strategy around it instead
Well,
of like,
exactly. Well, the fact that he said
oh,
most companies don't even have a communication strategy. We talked about the who, what, when, where, and why. That
yeah, right.
they were like, oh, we should probably do this. And he's saying it's absolutely critical that you have an overall communication strategy for your organization.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you and I would agree with this too, Adam, and that is this: when a company starts to become bigger and more mature and add more
Mhm.
layers and stuff like that, they sort of poo-poo the whole idea that like communications is a huge and critical part of their business. That they think that there are other issues like HR and IT and things like that,
Mhm.
which, by the way, all are very, very important. But don't dismiss the fact that the core message is still an extremely important aspect, if not one of the most important aspects of the business.
Yeah, again, my biggest takeaway, and again, I'm not objective, but he basically he stated a communication strategy is not optional. If you're going to have a successful organization, you need to have a formal communication strategy.
Yeah,
That was my
yeah.
big takeaway.
Yeah, and coming from a guy like that, I mean, really, like if our guests today don't know of Steve, but he's worked in some very, very like high level engagements. If when he's saying this is very important, what he's literally saying is that like, I mean, it's important to every organization on planet Earth, whether you're a solopreneur all the way
Mhm.
up to Jeff Bezos. Very, very important. So yeah.
Outstanding. All right, let's hit our next guest.
What's the one take home that you want everybody to remember about defining that future state? and about bringing other outsourced partners on like yourself so that we choose and select the right ones to be a part of the team based on the exercise that we talked about today.
Absolutely. So again, I just want to reinforce it, it's not enough for you to define your why. You want to be able to visualize where you see your current business or maybe some new venture if you're deciding to make an investment in a new product that plays nicely with your business. And just to give yourself some grace and understand that as a small business owner, we know you do a lot by yourself, right? Everybody's wearing multiple hats. But you also have to recognize that because you are in that self-constructed bubble for so much of your career, you're going to have blind spots. And you want to surround yourself with people that are going to really not only help you define that vision, but challenge your own preconceived notions of what you can be, what you can create, right? And that is how you're going to get to the biggest and best outcomes and ROI for any kind of technology investment, is making sure that you're shooting, you're not shooting too low. You're shooting high enough to get you where you want to be.
Excellent. All right, so, Christina, another fabulous guest. And a couple things that really hit home for me was a ton of companies will think that I'm gonna put in a technology that's gonna solve our problems.
Hmm.
Right. And she basically said, no, you got to define what your vision is, what your current state, what your future state, what you want that technology to accomplish. And then once that's defined, then you put in the technology.
Yeah, so brilliant gal. I've known her for quite some time, and I agree with you, Adam, right? I think that we all do this as small business owners, that we think that like just because we're really busy and we need to solve something, we don't think it through, and then we just like sort of fill in the gaps without really understanding what we need. And I thought she did a very good job of eloquently saying that like don't try to fill any gaps unless you completely understand your current and future states and what is actually needed. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought she was great. All right, excellent. Let's talk about our next guest.
Yeah, I think the first place I start, and Tom mentioned this before, have a destination. People, I need more leads. How many? Because if you say 10 versus 100, it's two different strategies and resources.
Hmm.
So I use the analogy of taking a cross-country trip. If you say, hey, I want to go, can you take me to go visit my cousin in California? We're in New York. Well, I need an address, or we're probably not going to find them, right? So start with that. Just and start with a simple goal and know your numbers. If you need 10 closed deals, how many leads is that based on your, so just get some basic KPIs in place is number one.
Hmm.
Number two would be to get really clear about what we call your population in pain, which is just another way of saying your ideal client profile, but a specific group of people that you can easily identify. In other words, if you went on, LinkedIn Sales Navigator and used all their filters, could you filter down to your population? If not, you don't know your population, right? And then their pain. What is their shared pain? Do they have a flat tire or a broken windshield wiper? Like, what is the shared pain of this group? And so you've got your metrics, you've got your population and pain, then pick a tactic, a marketing or business development tactic that you have the resources, time, or skill to execute that one thing against this plan. Those are your three steps to kind of get rolling.
All right, I love Forrest, another great guest, and big takeaways that hit me as a small business owner was, everyone says I need more sales. Well, what does that mean? Do you need two new accounts per month? Do you need 10 new accounts per month? And then because per what Forrest said is that's a completely different plan. If I'm trying to secure 2 versus 10, that's two different worlds. And also it's very clear before you even start, you need to know what problem are you solving and who's your ideal client profile. That's your area, but that's to me, that's everything, right? You got to know who your target audience is and how you can help them, and then how many new accounts do I need per month, and then put a plan in place around that.
Yeah, wickedly smart guy, right? I mean, I have the utmost respect for Forrest, and he's bringing up a very important topic that I couldn't agree with you more again, and that is like, look, just like what Christina was saying, like
Mhm.
now in the sales world, is that Forrest goes, please don't just try to solve general problems. You need to understand your current and future states and find out what strategy we really need to employ here. Because to his point, trying to get 10 leads versus 100 leads, completely different strategy. So understanding your ICP and like what you want out of it is huge.
And then I also like what he said, pick one tactic that you can implement immediately. Don't don't try to grab the whole moon. Take this one piece, implement it, and then leverage that and move on to the next one.
Yeah, man. You in the marketing world, you know this very well. Doing a bunch of things average is just a recipe for disaster. Like you really
Mhm.
just need to hone in on doing one or two things really, really well. So yeah, good talk by Forrest for sure.
Excellent. Let's hit our next guest.
Well, I think that you don't need to, the way to start, frankly, the best method is to get a small group of technologically inclined users within your company and
Mm,
start a beta AI test team. That's what I would do. That's what I
mm,
recommend for most. You don't have to have all this figured out.
yes.
Okay. You
Right,
don't
and
even have to
then
pick tools to start. You can literally assemble a team and go, okay, we're going to meet once a week for 45 minutes. Everybody's got a homework assignment. Maybe there's one tool that we want to test out. Try to turn playtime into business use cases, right?
right,
Mm,
So
and the
that's,
business use cases could be applied to either your content creation, your knowledge management, or your ops.
yeah, there could be marketing use cases, sales use
Right.
cases, automation use cases, right? And it also helps, frankly, if your IT department and your IT team leads have some expertise here. I'll tell you guys that oftentimes I'll be working with the customer and we'll get down to the end, and the business people all want to move forward. The IT department doesn't have their sea legs under them
Mhm.
with AI yet. And so deals can derail pending comfortability with
mm.
the IT department as well. And so, invest in your IT people, get them into some classes, get them into, there's plenty of information, both sort of formal and informal, to get folks spun up from an IT perspective so they feel comfortable when we go to implement some of these technologies.
All right. So Matt was fantastic and an expert in the AI field, which is kind of scary for everyone. But my takeaway was that, hey, you know what? Just pick one tool.
Mm.
Pick one tool, create a small use case, test it out, and then document the win. It's a great theme, right? You're leveraging your success, right? And he said, don't get overwhelmed. Just pick one tool and create one use case.
Yeah, I think and this didn't record all the things that we talked about with
Right.
Matt, but I think you and I probably learned more from Matt than anyone else. And you know what I mean? And with the world really pushing towards all AI right now, I mean, understanding that world is so, so important. What I liked about what Matt said is just turn playtime into like actual business, like business
Mhm.
objectives and goals. And that is like find out and play around with it. Like put together a little team of your own and start working through some of these case studies and see if you can like figure out how to run things a little bit better.
Right. And
AI
just
is ultra powerful, but it doesn't
and
have to
create
be
one workflow. That's
yeah,
it.
that's right. It doesn't have to be as scary as everybody leads it out to be. Like just start to play around with it and have some fun. And if it does good work, then implement it, you know?
Fantastic. All right. We're going to go to our next guest.
Yeah, I think that the problem is that I don't think most small business owners understand how early that process to be able to do that well starts. And it starts
Mm,
well before you even hire somebody. And it's did you do your company strategic planning, right? Do you know where your company is headed? And then if you know where your company is headed, you know what roles you need in order to achieve the goals you have as a company, which is where you start to build your skills assessment. hey, we have got to do marketing and we've got to do sales. So I need to find somebody who can do both instead of finding a specialist in sales or a specialist in marketing, right?
Mm.
And that's happening all across the board. And so you have to know what the metrics for your company are. And a lot of small businesses, they are just flying by the seat of their pants because they are overwhelmed, they are overtaxed, and they're trying to do it all, right? You've got these people, the CEOs who feel like they're just holding it together as it is. So to lift yourself up and out of that in order to be able to do strategic planning, sure,
Mm.
they might know, like, I want to grow my business 2x, right? That's about as deep as some business owners go. You've got to get deeper. You really need to know, what is it that I want to achieve in what sort of time frames. Then you can figure out, what skills do I need that I don't have to get there. Then you can divide that skill need into the various roles that it might be well suited for. So sales and marketing would go nicely together. Operations and HR often go nicely together, right? So you can
Mm.
figure out what buckets of a role you might need. Then you figure out, okay, so I need these skills and I'm going to call it this role. What are the metrics for the role? And very, very rarely have I seen companies that have preparation to the level of understanding the metrics that they are going to hold that person accountable for prior to the hire, especially if it's for a new role that's never existed before.
All right, fantastic. Toby was great and I think she hit on a big issue, and frankly, it's a mistake I've made, is that people not to hire, not be reactionary in your hire, right?
Mm.
People, companies will hit a roadblock and say, "Oh my God, we need to hire someone." But again, it goes back to basically all our guests in that how does this strategic hire map into your strategic plan for your organization, right? And if you don't know that, then you probably shouldn't be recruiting and trying to hire somebody. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's so crazy doing this right now, Adam. Like looking at all these guests, and not just the top five, but all the way through the full 25. And like, there's a common theme to like almost every one of our guests, and that
Mm-hmm.
is clarity is an absolute must. That we all are just way too reactionary and just like constantly trying to solve problems that we don't even understand. And so, like Toby being in HR and operations, and like speaking on to these other guests like Forrest that's talking about sales, or like Steve with PR, but it all comes
Mm-hmm.
down to the same thing, and that is, don't make decisions unless you're clear on what you need. And I love that simple core message because it can be applied to everybody throughout.
Right, exactly. And it ties into the overall strategic plan of needing clarity. And what she runs into is that most small businesses are hiring without that clarity, right? And then the person doesn't work out because you didn't define what success looks like for that individual.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hilarious. I'm sure you probably made the same mistake. I've hired people because I was busy instead of hired person for an actual role. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then that never works out. You know what I mean? Like, so making sure that you're clear, whether it's hiring somebody or like trying to come up with a strategy for marketing or sales or PR or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, clarity is an absolute must before you pull the trigger on anything.
Fantastic. All right, so that was a great recap for our. We pulled 5 out of all the great guests we had, but frankly, those guests were probably a little bit better.
You said that. For the rest of the other 20,
Yeah,
I love y'all. You know, you did
yeah.
great.
I will smooth this up. We'll smooth it out. So tell us, Tom, what do we got? What do we got coming up for 2026? What do we got? Who are we going to be hanging out with? Tell us what's going on for coming
Yeah,
in this new
well,
year.
I think between you and I, Adam, like we really want to try and get some really impactful and explosive guests that drive the major functions of small business world, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you find anybody or know anybody out there, for folks listening today, that has a message that can really help the small business community, whether that's in marketing, business development, and sales, HR, IT, compliance, AI, I don't care. But these small businesses really thrive on education and application. So we're really looking forward to bringing on some good guests with excellent messages. And I hope that everybody has an awesome 2026.